You are listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 112. Are you trying to figure out social media, but you're getting stuck and you're getting frustrated? Well, I am so with you on that one, and that is why I am so excited for today's episode as we take a deep dive into creating your topic pillars, if you should niche down and how far, how to create content your community actually wants and needs, and how to create an engaged community, which, we're all trying to do here, right? So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Tiffany Turner Moon, founder and creative force behind the TT Moon brand, where she shares affordable and obtainable style tips, but also real-life experiences with infertility, parenthood, fails, and triumphs of a blogger, her favorite recipes, and just so much more. And I just absolutely love how she shows up in her community. I think she is just such an inspiration, so I am just so pumped to have her on my podcast. So welcome, Tiffany. I'm just so honored that you are here with us, and I'm so excited to learn all about your story and advice. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you personally.
Hey, Jessica. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm so excited. Like you said, my name is Tiffany Turner Moon. I started blogging 2 years ago now. I'm originally from Connecticut, but I had moved to North Carolina 5 years ago. And when I was here, I just kind of realized that I was missing a part of who I was and wasn't really tapping into my passions and was kind of bored, honestly. And so I started blogging thinking it was a way to just kind of burn time and do something fun. And I would only talk about like fashion. But very quickly that turned into a lot more, and the platform morphed into a lot more. And like you said, I've talked about my fertility struggle currently, my interracial marriage, raising my daughter as a single mom versus a blended family, fashion, food. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so excited to get to connect with you and your listeners.
Amazing. Now, what were you doing before you started this blog?
Yeah, so prior to, I actually was an executive assistant for an organization called the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I was a regional executive assistant, and then when I moved from Charlotte, because I had gotten laid off, moved from Charlotte to Raleigh, North Carolina, and now I am a administrative assistant to three divisional senior vice presidents, and I do that on top of my blog. So it's definitely a juggling act for sure.
Holy crap, that's a lot. I know that supporting like one VP is a lot, but three, and
Yes.
then having your side hustle as well. Everybody who has a side hustle right now knows that that is a lot of work to be doing on the evenings and weekends and maybe your lunch breaks and whatnot as well.
Yes. All lunch breaks. It's really funny. My boss actually just followed me on TikTok, and I was like, "Oh gosh. Oh gosh." And I told her, I was like, "I record these on the weekend, like I batch record, and I might post it at lunchtime." She was like, "Oh my gosh, you're fine. I watch it for laughs." I'm like, "Oh gosh."
My boss follows me too, and he'll listen to my podcasts and stuff, and I'm just like, no, seriously, when I'm working, I'm working. Like, don't
Yeah, you're
worry.
like constantly reassuring them.
Exactly. Like I'll post my podcast or I'll post any kind of social media stuff during the day, but I'm like, don't worry, I schedule these in Planoly and it just goes out. Like I'm not
Story,
working. Yeah, it's
story
pretty
of my
funny.
life. It is pretty funny.
So how did you narrow down what your blog and your business was going to be about and what you're going to cover on it when it came to topics?
Um, I try to keep it kind of like three steps. So I realize that majority of the things that I talk about are kind of fall within lifestyle. I didn't really want to niche down too far, so I didn't want to be like just a fashion like I initially started out. So I did lifestyle as my broad kind of overall umbrella. And then I kind of figured, okay, well, what are three or four things, like core things that are pillars of your brand that you're passionate about that you want to talk about? And I was like, I love to cook, and that's a way to build relationships and, build memories. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about parenthood. Like, that's really important to me. I want to talk about style, but affordable style. I think a lot of the time people see bloggers and they think like, they all have this glamorous lifestyle and everything's bought new. And so no, like you can get designer purses consigned. So why not talk about that and then kind of piggyback on that and talk about how to save. And so like I had a whole series on my Instagram and my blog where I just talked about saving money, how to budget with coffee, how to budget with fertility, how to budget when you're buying clothes. And it just kind of branched off of that. And then just being a woman and just, our struggles as women, and especially as an African American woman, my natural hair and how working corporate, it's very different, and empathizing with others and then also educating others. And those were kind of core things that were important to me. So before December, I would have like each day, like I would kind of have a schedule, and I would talk about each one of the topics. So that way my audience kind of got used to it and expected it. Between November and December, I've completely gotten off track. So I haven't done that recently. But in the past, that has really, really worked for me, and it's kind of trained my audience on what they can expect and train me to deliver and show up.
Gotcha. I like that. I like that approach of like scheduling your topics so that you're kind of moving through the different ones and giving your audience an idea of exactly what's going to be covered and when and what they can expect, and that kind of creates expectations with them, like they're coming back
Hmm.
wanting to more, like they know on Monday it's going to be this and they're just like dying to have it.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's easier for you. Like, like you have a schedule. You're not just throwing caution to the wind and posting whatever, which I've done. Don't get me wrong. I
Mhm.
have done.
I find it so hard with coming up with things to talk about. So I definitely like that approach of, on this day, it's going to be about this. So it kind of makes it easier to determine exactly what you're going to create.
Yeah, yeah, and you can use your Instagram is really your real estate, and that's where your main kind of beautifully curated pictures are. But I put everything in between. I put my beautiful pictures, I put my mess all on my Instagram, but in my stories is where like I'll show up, and if I want to, or if I have a sponsored post and it has to be very beautiful and very curated, I can get in my stories and show up with no makeup, no filter, and just be like, hey, this is I woke up like this is what's going on. And it's serving both sides of your audience. So that's always, and I tell people that all the time, that's always an option. If you want to schedule your content out, you don't have to talk about the same thing in your stories that you do on your Instagram feed. Your stories can really be your place where you just let your hair down and you are yourself and you show up for your followers.
I love that. Now, with narrowing down your niche when you are starting out on a blog or a business,
Hmm.
they're always constantly telling you get as niche as you can with whatever
Hmm.
you are going to be talking about. And often a lot of people, when they start looking at exactly what they're going to be covering in their business or their blog, they get a little bit down a little bit when they start like seeing
Yeah.
that it's already been done. People are already talking about that. People are already doing that. So did you ever feel that way when you started out? And what advice would you have for others that are just beginning that journey themselves to not get down on the fact that that topic's already been covered?
Yeah, so I felt that way actually recently. I kind of rabbit holed and I was like, yeah, like the people are doing this. Why? Like, what makes me different? And I think that is probably the biggest piece of advice I can give somebody is that you're different. Everyone's story is different. Everyone's journey is different. So overall, it might look the same, but it's really not. All of our walks of life are multifaceted, and they're all just so intricate on their own. And when you really begin to realize that you bring something different and something unique and authentic to the plate, I kind of feel like that's when people, like when you recognize your own worth sometimes, and when you recognize your own confidence, that's when that people are kind of really drawn in. They're kind of like, oh, she's owning it. She's not saying like she's the master at doing this, but she is saying she has mastered it her way, and she has mastered somewhat her journey. Um, but yeah, I sometimes, again, recently just kind of felt like people have done this. Like there are plenty of lifestyle creators, and you know, it's oversaturated, but it's really not, because everyone shows up online differently. I've seen lifestyle creators who talk about lifestyle, but kind of change their photos. So it's like a lot of clip art and stuff like that. I've seen lifestyle creators who do like very vivid photos, other ones who do very muted photos, and their captions are, very moody and emotional, and other ones who are always peppy. And so there are so many, there are just so many different holes and different really bottles that you can pour into, that I know people think it's oversaturated, but it's honestly not. Like it's honestly not. There is an area and a community for everyone. And I wouldn't get too bogged down with the niches, because I did it, and it cut off very quickly the community that I wanted to gain, that I didn't know that I wanted to gain, but that I did want to gain. And ultimately, when I only did fashion, it kind of cut off lifestyle and parenting and all these different things. And if we're multifaceted, like why shouldn't our brands be? Our brands and our platforms should grow with us. They shouldn't stay stagnant.
Oh, I love that. There's just such great pieces of advice throughout that entire thing. And I love that you said master it your way. That's so, so good. That's such a great line.
Yeah, girl. I listen, people do it all the time. They're like, "Oh, I want to master it like them." No, you have to be different. I know it's corny, but that's literally what makes us special. The difference in your journey and your story and your tone and how you tell it. Own that. It's beautiful.
100%. Now, content creation is super tough, and we've talked about this a little bit and how you kind of have structured your days and whatnot and what you're going to
hmm
cover. And obviously, we're here to serve our communities. That is the number one purpose, is to be there and to give them what they need and what they want as well. But how do we find out exactly what that is so that we're creating the content that they're going to resonate with the most?
Oh my gosh, such a good question. Okay. It's so funny. People ask me this all the time. I do mentoring sessions, and they're like, how do I figure out what my audience wants? And if they're not responding to my posts, like, what am I doing wrong? Well, it really might not be that you are not creating quality content. It just may be that you're not getting your target audience yet. So, one thing that I do religiously, if only once a month, I poll my audience. So, last month I polled them on like Thanksgiving stuff. I was like, do you want to see Black Friday sales, or do you want to see Cyber Monday? Do you want to see desserts, or do you want to see appetizers? Do you want to see sweater weather outfits, or do you want to see transitioning into winter pieces? And from that, I was able to really get a grasp on what my audience wanted, what they wanted to see. And I polled them more than once. And that way, anybody who didn't see the poll, I was able to capture their answers. And when I really began like rolling out stuff in my stories and rolling out content on my feed, my community responded so much more. They were so much more engaged. And a lot of them, I actually got a lot of DMs that said thank you, because a lot of people don't ask what we want to see. They just kind of push the sales and what's gonna look good for them versus, what the community wants to see. We are creators, but we're also consumers. And I think sometimes we forget that. So it's important just to take the role as consumer and make sure you give your audience a voice, because I mean, they're the reason we're here.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said pull people, because I started doing that on Saturdays, where I would just do a whole series of like, let's get to know each other type thing. And I would mix in, business type questions that relate to what I want to create for them and whatnot. And then just like personal questions. But when you engage with your community that way, and you're trying to have a conversation with what is going on their end, my engagement quadrupled, which is
Yes.
insane.
Yes. I feel like so many people, it's like such an underutilized part of social media, of blogs, is polling. I did a poll recently, and it was I had kind of I had kind of been off of my stories for a bit, and that's really where I show up and interact with my community. And so I said to them, I know I have a lot of new followers here. Instead of putting something just on my Instagram feed and just saying, hey, introducing myself, I want you guys to send me a personal question. I will respond to your question on my Instagram story so everybody can see the question. But then I'm going to send you a question back to your DMs so we can strike up a conversation. And yes. And people felt like, oh my gosh, she actually cares. She's taking time to sit down and talk to me. It's not just about posting a photo. And I got to get to know the people who are following me, which is so important.
Oh, that's so great. I love that you were sparking conversations in that way because I think that the community, they'll want to be part of your community even more when they feel like you're talking with them versus just talking at them and just throwing stuff at, your feed and whatnot, but you're trying to connect with them on a deeper level.
Correct. You're spot on.
Oh, that's such great advice. I love that. Now, how do you create like a spark for that conversation to begin with? So you talked about this one way, but like when you're posting an Instagram post or, anything like that, I always try to put like a question at the end, but that doesn't always translate into like comments or anything like that. So how
Right.
do you get them to engage with your posts?
So there are a couple ways. One thing that I practice is at least once a week, I will spend 1 to 2 hours interacting with my followers. I will randomly choose followers and go to their Instagram accounts, to their social media accounts. I do it on my TikTok too, and just show support and interact. But also, I have found when I do that prior to a post, it boosts engagement on my posts when they come up. Like it's on the forefront, I'm on the forefront of people's minds. And they're like, oh, she just posted. What is she talking about? The other thing that I do is I used to put my questions at the end. And I realized that we as creators, honestly, like we have maybe 7 seconds, if that, to really capture somebody's attention. And they might not read through my whole caption. And so I kind of took it back to primary school. And I was like, oh, what did my teacher always say when you're starting out a paragraph or like you're doing your intro paragraph? Do like your first two sentences, just like grab somebody's attention. And they're just like, wait a minute, I need to keep reading this. And so I've started putting my questions or like really thought provoking quotes at the very beginning of my post. And that way, I'm asking you a question, I'm engaging you from the beginning, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, let me see what you're talking about. And if it's a quote, I'm invoking some sort of emotion. It doesn't always have to be a happy feeling. It could be a feeling of aha, or it could be a feeling of well, wait, I don't agree with that. Okay, well, let's talk about it in my comment section. Why don't you write something back and tell me what you think, and we can have a open, candid, and respectful conversation. And it has that in itself has honestly quadrupled my engagement underneath my posts.
That's awesome. I'm going to try that. So I'm sure that a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing that today. It's so true because you have to look at your own behavior when you're scrolling through your feed as well. How often do you click the more button on a caption?
Right. Right. I'm like, oh, yeah. But if it really grabs me, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Let me finish reading this. What are they talking about? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now let's get back to your own personal journey with creating your business and growing it. What did you struggle with most starting your blog and how did you overcome it? Was it, limiting blocks, fears, negative self-talk, like all those types of things?
Yeah. Um, I think it was a mixture. I think it was negative self-talk. I thought nobody wants to hear from me. I will never be as big as a creator or impact anybody as much as a creator will with 100,000 followers. And I very quickly realized that these smaller creators as we are and with the smaller followings, actually a lot of brands prefer creators of that size because we are more in touch and more in contact with our following than somebody with 100,000 followers. So that for me, hearing that from multiple brands and PR agencies, kind of made me pivot the way I saw my platform and my worth as a creator. And the other thing I probably really struggled with was content creation in of itself. I would get to the point where I'd be like I'm just going to create content. How? Like, what am I going to talk about? And so I really had to sit down and figure out what my brand pillars were, what I wanted to talk about, and plan out my content. Like, I cannot stress that enough. Planning out your content, whether you make a content calendar, whether you put it in Excel, planning out your content and knowing what you are doing makes a world of difference. And when I did that, it really helped. It really helped having a mood board, kind of figuring out what I wanted to talk about, what colors, figuring out colors of outfits and stuff that I wanted to shoot, because colors invoke emotions as well. Like, I did a post a couple months ago, and I was talking about, I was wearing orange. It was I was wearing orange polish, and I was talking about the color orange and the different emotions that are associated with that color. So mood boards and planning your content. First of all, knowing your worth, but mood boards and planning your content once you get to the content creation stage is huge. And Pinterest is my best friend.
Mm-hmm. So planning your content, I think that this was brilliant. I just started doing this myself. Now, do you plan like months ahead, weeks ahead? Do you just do the 1 week? Like, what does your organization process look like?
Sure. When I started out planning it, like, people told me you should plan 2 months in advance, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I would get really, really overwhelmed. I'd be like, I can't do this. Very quickly, I realized I have to do what works for me. And if planning it out in 2 months does, like, 2 months in advance doesn't work for me, then it doesn't work for me. So now I can plan it out 2 months in advance. But right about now, especially with like everything going on in my life personally, I have it planned out by a month. And I sit down usually on Sundays. I take about 2 hours. I ask my husband, like, hey, can you just kind of take my daughter and you guys could do something and just let me put some music on and kind of figure out what I want to talk about this month. I'll look up some of the special holidays that come up, like sometimes National Donut Day or National Pizza Day, National Dog Lover Day, and I'll incorporate that into my content. And from there, I kind of work around my pillars, make sure I'm covering my pillars and things that my following expects of me. But then if I have a sponsor post, it's plug and play. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have a sponsor post on this day, so I can't talk about what I usually do, but let me just move it to this day, 2 weeks from now. And that way I'm covering myself. So right now I'm doing it in a month in advance, but I don't want anybody to be like me and think like, this person said like you have to do it 2 months in advance, like you need to do that. No, if you can only do it a week in advance, that is enough. That you don't have to worry about the constant, oh my God, I forgot to post, or oh my God, I haven't posted in 3 days. So Instagram is not really going to push my content out as much because I haven't been as active on the app. Like, if you can plan it out a week and then work your way up to 2 weeks, work your way up to 3 weeks, I 110% encourage it.
Gotcha. Now, what are some key learnings that you've had along the way, whether it's about growing your community, being intentional and authentic, finding your voice and using it in an impactful way? What types of things would you like to share with those that are starting their own journey right now?
Um, if you are starting your journey, I would say first thing is recognize your worth, and then add New York State sales tax. Make sure that you recognize just how expensive and rare that you are and what you bring to the influencer marketing world. Next thing I would say is do not put all your eggs in one basket. I did that starting out and only focused on Instagram, and it didn't it it didn't really it didn't screw up the trajectory of my brand, but it definitely slowed it down. And so I would say make sure you are cross promoting, promote on TikTok, promote on Instagram, promote yourself on Twitter. If you feel like, you have a great inner monologue you want to share with people, promote on a podcast. Like, don't just limit yourself to one avenue. Your blog is the most important thing that you will ever have in your brand as a blogger. It is yours. No one can take it from you. I stress this all the time to people. If Instagram decided to delete my account for whatever reason tomorrow, that is a loss of all of the followers that I have, all of the followers, all of the content creation I had up there, all of the comments, memories, all of it. You own your blog. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, it's all borrowed. So, make sure that you are properly investing in yourself. And the other way to properly invest in yourself is to educate yourself. Never feel like you are the smartest person in the room. If that's ever the case, you are in the wrong room. Ask
Mm-hmm.
questions, even if you feel like they're silly. Ask them, because I bet you there's somebody else who wants to know that as well. Take different courses, listen to podcasts. Do influencer boot camps. Really learn the tricks of the trade, and I promise your community will come. It's not everyone just, I don't know, and I was caught up in it too. Everyone just wants to so badly, have your platform just grow and turn into this insane thing where you're touching all these different facets and different people. But I very quickly realized that I was able to make an impact with when I had 10 to 15,000 followers, um, as opposed to some people who have never had national media coverage. I had national coverage. I've been on very, very big podcasts. You can make a difference. You don't have to have 60,000 followers. You don't have to have 20, honestly. You can make a difference. It's just a matter of how.
That's awesome advice. And I love that you talked about how your website is like the most important thing, because a lot of
Hmm.
people when they do start out, it's all about Instagram or whatever social media platforms that they're on and gaining all those followers there. But if you have none of them going to your blog or your website, it's kind of useless, because if Instagram goes, you have nothing left.
Nothing. I literally was just on TikTok the other day and I saw a creator who has like a million followers on TikTok, and she had hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, and somebody hacked her Instagram account. She lost everything. Everything, and she is starting from scratch on her Instagram. I think she has like 500 followers. Like, and she stressed it. She was like, I've been so big about my TikTok account and my Instagram account that that's a loss for me, because a lot of brands are marketing through Instagram, but I could have I could have kind of redirected them to my blog, but she was like, I don't have one. I cannot stress it enough. Like, make sure that you are pushing your brand and not the tools and the marketing liaisons that really help us push your brand, because that's what sells and that's what people want to see.
Yes, definitely. Did you have any mentors or anybody teaching you along the way, or did you learn everything kind of as you went?
I had, when I started out, it's so funny. I had emailed some really, really big influencers, and one responded. And she was so nice. Her name is Jamie Sitiano. And I was like, I'm just starting out. I think I had like maybe 200 followers. And I was like, I'm just starting out. I really take this serious. I want to blog. And she responded to me and she literally said, I'm at a party right now. It was the holidays. She was like, I can send you a couple of messages when I get back home. Just give me some time. And true to her word, a couple hours later, she sent me like long Instagram DMs, like telling me things to do and things to focus on. And same thing I'm saying now, not to put all your eggs in one basket, focus on your blog, all of this stuff. And to this day, she still shows up and supports me on my Instagram. She DMs me all the time. She's wonderful. And then I also took a lot of courses. Majesty a Champion has like blogger boot camp. She has, I think it's called like bags and brands. So that one kind of teaches you how to negotiate with brands and to negotiate what you're worth. And the blogger boot camp is just like really an intro to the blogging world, which helped me a lot because there are so many different facets of influencer marketing. It's not even funny. Sometimes I'm still learning. Um, but the biggest thing was I realized I can learn. I can continue to learn. I can learn, and there's just no cap. There's just no cap to it. I listen to podcasts. I will research. I will read other people's blog posts about how to monetize as a blogger and what to do and different avenues and stuff like that. And I kind of write it down, and I've post-it notes everywhere at my desk with my laptop. And yeah, I started out reaching out to somebody, and thankfully out of all of them, one answered. And then from there, it was a lot of researching and late nights and trying to retain what I learned.
I could definitely second that. It definitely helps to have somebody who has knowledge a little bit to be
Yes,
able to share with you and guide you along the way a little bit, but there's so much benefit into doing your own research. I feel like it sticks more.
for sure. It really does. It really, and honestly, there's just some reward to it. Like, you feel good. You're like, I like put blood, sweat, and tears into this. Like, I stayed up till 2 in the morning and researched this to make sure I knew what I was talking about, and it feels good.
And it builds your confidence.
Absolutely. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. And that's important.
Oh my God. Yeah. Now, how do you stay inspired and creative when this passion of yours is now your job? Well, your side hustle for now.
Yeah. It's so my husband said to me, when I first started, he was like, "This will be fun when you're doing this as like a hobby, but once it becomes a job, you are like you're it's not going to be fun anymore." And it's fun. It's still fun. It's just now it is. There are different parts that are challenging that I wasn't expecting. So for me, I try and when it comes specifically to content creation, when it comes to it, I try and make it fun. I try and not just go out and take a really pretty photo and promote a brand. Like I had a sponsored post for Maui Moisture, which is hair care company, and it was all of their bottles, like their whole theme is very island, and so I was like, "Oh, well, what can I do that can like kind of spice this up and tap into my creative side so I don't feel like I'm just working, but I feel like I'm doing something fun." So I like got on Amazon, I looked up coconuts, like coconut cups, and I looked up like the little Hawaiian leis and looked up all this fun stuff that was related to sort of the brand to kind of spice things up and still make it fun. And that to me has worked wonders, especially when it comes to content creation, especially when there's a hard deadline. That to me has really it's done wonders. Like it's done wonders, and it's still made it fun, but business as well. It's not just, oh, I got to go outside and take a picture, and this is going to be boring. It's going to be annoying because I have to change my outfit 5 different times. Like you've got to make it fun.
Yeah, 100%. Now, with working a 9 to 5 and having your side hustle, having a child, your family, your relationship with your husband, taking time for yourself, like what does your day to day look like? How do you organize your time so that you are able to put time aside for your business?
Oh my goodness. Day, day to day. So since we're working from home, I've been working from home since February because of the pandemic. So used to I would get up maybe around like 5 o'clock. I didn't have to be to work till 8:30, so I would get up at five. And about 5 to 6:30, I would try and use that time to make sure like any posts that I had scheduled were scheduled for the right times. Do a little bit of research, and then I would do my 9 to 5. We'll get my daughter to school, do my 9 to 5, come home, make dinner, and then spend like late nights, like sometimes till midnight, sometimes till 2 and 3 in the morning, researching, doing everything I can for my business. I very quickly burned out. I very quickly realized that this is not going to work. And so now I will set aside chunks of time. I will let my husband know, hey, I'm going to set aside 2, 3 hours on Saturday, or I'm going to set aside time midweek, sometimes Wednesday. I'll just kind of do a pulse check and check in on all my different platforms and do it after work and only do it for an hour. But usually on the weekends, if I do it, I set aside 2 to 3 hours where I can really focus on what I'm doing and what needs to be done. And that's another reason that the planning of content it's vital because when you're able to plan your content out and schedule those posts to post for you, you don't have to spend all that time during the week taking away from your family, taking away from your job, which I can't do because that's my main source of income. And just making sure that, still showing up authentically, but also making sure that I'm still giving my job the attention that it needs. So there are certain blocks of time that are off limits to social. I will not go on. If I have lunch, I'll take a break, check things out, maybe record a couple TikToks, go back to work, and then it's no social media at all until after work. But I will say it's very important to be able to put the phone down because very early on, very quickly, I did burn out, and then I neglected my family because I was so wrapped up in this. So I've really had to learn to set boundaries.
I think a lot of people experience that, especially at the beginning when you're just like so gung ho and so passionate about what you're doing and you want to spend all
Hmm.
this time doing it. And there's a lot to do, which is
Hmm.
a very understatement. But, burnout is such a big thing and a lot of people can experience it. So I would love to hear what your self love practice looks like now, having learned everything that you have, having experienced burnout and tried to make more of a structure to your weeks and your days so that you're avoiding that.
Yeah. Biggest, the biggest thing is setting boundaries. So realizing that as a creator, a lot of people want to see the intimate parts of your life and the unscripted moments and the really funny moments. And sometimes I'll record them, but sometimes I won't. And sometimes I have to realize, not sometimes, a lot of times I've had to say to myself, my husband has had to say to me, like, I want this time to be sacred. Like, this is for us. So setting those boundaries and making sure to abide by them, setting up times where you put the phone and computer away and you don't do anything but live in the moment and enjoy your family, your loved ones, your friends. It could be the housewives. Just completely detach from everything and really, honestly, bubble baths
Oh
with
God,
some
yes.
candles. Yes, I will, because there I'm in the water. I don't want to mess up my phone. I don't want to mess up my computer. And I just use that time to put on Alexa, play music, and just like drown everything out and just relax. And my husband's a big advocate of it too. He'll be like, "We'll take a bubble bath and just relax. Like, your social will be there. You'll be fine." And just you're in that sense, you're re-energizing yourself and you're pouring into yourself, because if you're not here to create for people, where's your brand going to go? If you are not good enough, like, health wise, to create, there is no you, there is no your brand's not there, there's nothing. So really realizing that those boundaries are important, and doing things as simple as watching Housewives without my phone near, or taking a bubble bath, it really helps.
I second that. And I love that you said, if you're not taking care of you and then you're not able to show up in your community, like
Yeah.
how is that going to help your business? And that's so
Right.
true, because if you do experience burnout, the recovery process is
Oh my
even
gosh.
longer, right?
Hmm.
Like you don't you don't have time to be taking that recovery process to begin with. So don't allow yourself to get to that place.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So let's talk about your business. You've said that you mentor people.
Mhm.
So what exactly do you offer with your business?
Sure. So I start out with an initial 30-minute consultation. And that way I'm a firm believer in just kind of filling people out and letting people fill me out, because I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I know everyone's not my cup of tea. So I let people kind of fill it out and, let them kind of understand how I operate. I'm fast paced sometimes, sometimes I may forget something, or, I may be a pain in the butt. And then I kind of ask them, what do you want to do? And for me, honestly, I had a client who was only about the numbers and only about hitting 10K. And for me, it just wasn't a good situation. For me, I just kind of felt like I want to pour into somebody who is about the content and is about the experience and is about um, what this all entails and being impactful, because that's what I'm good at and that's what I would be good at mentoring somebody about. And so I start out with a 30-minute consultation. And from there, I will send a follow up email and say, what do you think? I poll them. So I have them do a survey and to find out how they liked it, how they liked the conversation. And then I ask them, like, is this something that you want to do long term? Do you want to meet weekly? Do you want to meet once a month? Do you want to meet quarterly? And just kind of have somebody who holds you accountable or tells you the latest trends or things that you should look for. So it looks very different for everybody. I have one person who I meet with quarterly, and she just kind of checks in with me and just says, this is what I've done since we spoke last. What are some other things I could work on? I have another client who I talk with about every 2 weeks, and it's a touch base of holding her accountable, but also telling her, here's some things that you can kind of look for. Here's what I'm hearing about hashtag strategies. Here's what I'm hearing that's currently trending that can get you in front of this certain audience, and just help. I feel like more than anything, I like to give people the pep talks that I wanted, when I started. And I like to give people the reassurance that I wanted when I started in content creation, because I think influencer marketing can be a dog eat dog world. And I really want to break that cycle. And so I hope to do that through mentoring and assisting people.
That's just so awesome, because I think you've learned a ton through everything that you've experienced. And I think you have so much value to share with someone who is on their own journey. And I love that you're helping them, giving them something that you didn't have yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to pay it forward. I firmly believe it.
100%. Now, if anybody wants to learn more about you, where do you hang out the most? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I hang out the most, I would say my blog. I hang out the most on my blog, so you can find my blog at, www.tiffanyturnermoon.com. I also hang out a lot, try and spend my time between TikTok, which is Tiff Turner Moon, and then Instagram, which is Tiffany, Turner Moon.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for being my guest, for sharing your story and your journey. I know that so many are going to benefit from hearing your experience and your advice.
Thank you so much for having me. This was honestly such a treat. Thank you.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.